Hello, and we're going to make a fun hat today. There's only 2 stitches really in it, just owl eye and E-wrap in 2. It's really fast and easy to make. We will have 2 rows of purl in it, and they'll be just to make the beginning look nice. It's brimless. You can make a beanie, or you can just go right ahead and make a slouch hat. I'm using a 3/4 inch gauge loom. It has 36 pegs. I have a pretty small head. This knits up a little bit small, so if you have a larger head, you're going to want to use the bigger wide gauge loom in your 3 loom set. Or if you're lucky enough to have the one in between, that may work fine for you too. The yarn I'm using is Charisma, and the color of it is, it's here somewhere. Okay, there's the color. Northern Lights. So there you go. I keep my work in a baggie because it keeps it from getting dirty, it keeps it from getting messed up, and it's easy to find those big baggies too. Okay, so then we're just going to cast on. And we're going to use a chain cast on, so we just make a knot, slip knot. So anyway, the way I make them is just like this. I just take this, put it behind, stick a yarn through, and pull. There we go, fast slip knot. Then I put it on and tighten it, so the yarn's going this way and our working yarn's going this way. And got my loom hook here. And then all we're going to do is scoop down. This is a chain cast on, one of the chain cast ons. Looks really nice on hats. Anyway, we're going to scoop our yarn down in here, and then we're going to take the working yarn and we're just going to scoop it up and through. There we go, just like that. And then we put it behind peg 2, tighten up our working yarn there, and if you have a Cindywood loom, I just loop it over there to keep it tight, but you know, it's not necessary. You can tighten it up when you come back here. Okay, so now we have the loop here, and I just put the working yarn through and just give it a tug, and behind with the loop, the next peg, and just come in front and give it a tug. Very easy cast on. Behind, give it a tug. And I kind of do it in this 3 tug motion. It helps me to make my tension even, but whatever works for you. And when you've done a few, you probably should go back and check and make sure that you like your tension. You want it to be snug because you don't want to have big holes at the beginning, but you want to be able to get it through, so you have to make sure that you have a little give there, or you're going to have a hard time knitting it through, and you want to keep your work loose. You don't want to have to struggle when you knit. Okay, so we just keep going, casting on. There we go. And once again, just really slow. I'll do a close-up. I've just got my loops here, and I'm just going behind the peg, and then I'm taking the working yarn, putting it through, catching it with my fingers, and just tightening it up. That's all. Behind, through, and tightening it up. Okay, I'm going to put it on pause because you don't want to watch me go all the way around the loom, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so here I am, and I'm just going to go over the last peg in the row, and then we want to connect it to the first peg. All we do is stick our loop over and pull to tighten it, and then I'm just going to knit that off, and that will keep the yarn secure. And there we are. And we're ready to start our row, and I'm going to take this off here now. It doesn't need to be there anymore. Now our first row is going to be purl, then we're going to do owl eye stitch, and then purl again, and that's what we're going to do to keep this edge looking really good. When we mix owl eye with purl, we get kind of a wavy stitch that mixes in really good with chains. So we start to purl. So to purl, we put our peg under the loop, just like when we picked up the yarn when we were casting on, and then we pull up the loop. But instead of doing anything else, we just slip that loop over the peg. So we take this whole thing, you can do it with your fingers or the loom hook, but we just take this whole thing and put the loop on the peg and tighten, and that's a purl. Okay, we'll get a little bit closer here. Take your working yarn, your hook under the working yarn, pull the yarn through, pull the whole thing up and pop it on the peg. Hook through, pull the working yarn up and take it off. And just so you can see, this is it, the loop in the back. And I'm just putting it over and tightening. Okay, I'll do one more. Pulling up the loop and just putting it on. There we go, and tightening. Okay, so then I'm just going to meet you back up here again and just finish purling that. Okay, here we are on the last purl of the row. Okay, and here we are, and now we're going to start doing owl eye. So the next row is an owl eye row. So we take the working yarn, put it over peg 1, knit it off. And then we take the working yarn, put it behind peg 1 and over peg 2. And this is the owl eye stitch. You do this, and then you're always on peg 1 wherever you end up. So you just go behind peg 1, over peg 2, knit it over. You're behind peg 1, you go around and over peg 1, over peg 2, knit it off. Go close up. You're behind peg 1, go over peg 1, over peg 2, and just knit it off. Okay, over peg 1, over peg 2, and knit it off. Knit it off. That's all you do. You're on peg 1, behind peg 1, over peg 2, knit it off. On peg 1, back around, over peg 2, knit it off. Now every one of your pegs is getting 2 stitches on it. It's getting this one when we wrap like this one is getting its 1. Then when we come here and rewrap it, it's getting its 2. So every peg has 2 stitches. So that's something to keep in mind whenever we are switching from one stitch to the other, is we make sure every peg gets 2 stitches, and that way we're not going to get any holes in our work. So behind peg 1, over 1 and 2. And so we're just going to complete the row, and I'll meet you back up at the end of the row. Okay, so here we are, and to finish off this row, we wrap peg 1, over peg 2, and there we are back on the beginning peg, and I put 1 wrap on it so I don't get a hole after finishing this row. And then we're going to go right into our purl stitch. So we're going to purl for 1 row, and then we're done. Everything we're going to do for our cast on to make a really nice edge for our hat. So we just start to purl, and we're going to purl all the way around, and I'll meet you back up after your row of purl. Okay, so we've done our row of purl, and so this is what we have so far. We have our cast on, and we have our rows here. And then we're just going to start into our pattern, and our pattern is going to be 3 rows of owl wrap, and then we're going to have 2 rows of E-wrapping 2 pegs, and we're going to alternate those pegs. So I'll show you that when we get up to it. The first 3 rows are owl eye. So do 3 rows of owl eye, and I'll meet you up back there. And to do owl eye, we've ended here. We just go over peg 1, and that gives it its 1 stitch. We go over, behind, and in front of peg 1 and 2, and we start our owl eye row just like that. Behind peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, knit off. Behind peg 1, in front, over peg 1 and 2. Okay, so I will see you after you've done your 3 rows. Okay, here I am finishing off my 3 rows. I'm at peg 1. I'm going to go behind it and over peg 1, and I'm not going to wrap this one. I'm just going to go behind. I want to get my 2 wraps on this peg. Then we're going to do 2 rows of E-wrap in 2, and we're going to alternate them. So we're going to do the white and the green together, and then we're going to do 3 and 4, these 2 together. Then we're going to do 5 and 6 together, 7 and 8 together, and so on all the way around the loom. And we're going to end here because it's an even loom. If it's an odd loom, you're going to have 1 peg right there, and you'll be wrapping that peg on your next row around. If you're on an odd loom, it will make this look maybe a tiny bit different here, but that's okay. That's the back of your hat, and it won't be very noticeable at all. Okay, so well, actually, I'll show you what the second row will be like, just to help you give you a better understanding of the whole thing. So after we've wrapped these, we're going to alternate them. So when we come back, we'll be wrapping the last peg and the first peg together. That'll make the last peg get a little bit more wraps, but better too many wraps than not enough, because not enough gives you a hole. So when we come back, and you won't see it, so, well, at least not easily. So you'll be wrapping these 2, and then these 2, and then these 2, and then these 2. Okay, so we're going to wrap it. We're going to take our working yarn, and we're going to go behind pegs 1 and 2, and then in front of them. Okay, and then we're going to go to pegs 3 and 4, so we're around the back, and we're just going to go over them, and then we're going to go around peg 5 and 6 and over them. And of course the yarn would have to be blue against the green, but I think you can see it. I'm going to get pretty close here. And then we do the next 2 pegs together and the next 2 pegs together. So we're always wrapping 2 pegs together, and the only way these pairs are connected is just this one yarn that's coming back to connect them. And when you've got about this far, what you're going to want to do is go back, because you want this to be really, really loose. So you want to check. See, I wrapped it really loose, but you might have wrapped it tighter. If you wrapped it too tight, you just take that, pull it out, and loosen it, and then you can go back and loosen all these. And they can be so loose they feel like they're going to fall out, because when we do the alternating row, it's going to tighten it up a lot, and we don't want to have really tight work that's hardening it over. Okay, so just keep it loose, and before you knit it off, you're going to want to make sure all your loops are nice and loose, just to make this whole project easy to do. So just go around wrapping every 2 pegs, every 2 pegs, every 2 pegs. Making sure they're loose. I've done a lot of these, so mine are loose. And then here we are, ending right here. And we're just going to knit it off. And what I usually do, because I don't want to lose track if I have to put the work down, is I knit off these 4 right away, and then I just do my wrap that's going to be over these 2 and snug it down. If you didn't have a place to snug it down, you could always knit over the one that's holding the working yarn. That would hold it in place. That's just going to help me so that I wrap the right pegs the next time around if I have to put the work down and I forget what I'm doing. We're just going to go around, and as you see, this is coming over pretty easy. It helps to be loose. It even helps to be loose doing your owl eye. Owl eye never looks loose, so do it very loose and it'll look nice. And it'll be easy on your hand and your carpal tunnel or whatever you have there, wrist. Just nicer if your work is loose. Okay, I'm just going to go around like this to unwrap the rest. This helps keep the yarn from twisting. Well, I can't twist too much. I have it in a baggie. Okay, so here we are, and we've already started our wrap on the last peg, which is peg 36 and peg 1. If you're on that uneven loom, you're wrapping your last peg, which could be peg 41 with peg 1. And then you're just wrapping these peg pairs. And if you want to make sure, if you are worried and you're not sure you're wrapping the right peg pairs, if you look at them, okay, so let's just look at this. These are wrapped together. You can see that these are wrapped together. See, there's the yarns connecting them, and then there's just this long yarn in between. So everywhere you see this, you see that they are connected together. So you're going to want to be wrapping. Okay, we're going to go, that's been wrapped together, that's been wrapped together. So this time we're wrapping over and around where that long yarn was, see? So we've alternated it. We're not going to wrap the same 2 pegs. We just go around nice and loose. And like I say, this is going to tighten up. And so again, like, all you have to do to loosen your work is do this. You can see mine are quite loose. And that's it. That's all there is to doing an alternating E-wrap and 2-stitch. So that's the pattern. You just do 3 owl eyes and then 2 E-wrap and 2, alternating the second one, and repeat. And that's all you have to do. And I'm just going to show you. We're just going to knit off the few. I always like to set it up for my next stitch, because that way I never lose my place of what I'm doing. Okay, what I want to do is go over to peg 1. So I'm just going to be going like this, behind this peg, over peg 1, and I can do my 1 knit. And that's the first knit of my owl eye stitch right there. I can tell, because I always leave it like that, that's my owl eye row about to start. We're just going to knit it over, and I'm just going to pause here. It must be getting boring watching me do all these knit overs. Okay, so I finished knitting that off, and now we can just take a look at our work here. And here is our brim. As you can see, we've got some nice loops happening here, and here these pink yarns actually, and here pinky purple yarns, that's our 3 rows of owl eye. And there, I'll do more of a close-up. That's what they look like in here, just like that. So 3 rows of owl eye, and then this is our stitch here. You're up until you can't see it yet, but when you do see it pop up, it's going to look really nice in there. You're going to give a really nice fabric. So what we're going to do now is we do our 3 rows of owl eye, and then we'll do our E-wrap in 2, and you can go back in the video, watch again how I'm doing those stitches, but we're just going to do 3 rows of owl eye and then the 2 rows of the E-wrap in 2, alternating the second one all the way up the hat. Now I'm going to make this hat 9 inches long, which is a really nice, for me with my little head, 9 inches actually gives me a little bit of a slouch beanie, and that's the style I like. For most people that would just be a beanie, a toque we call it here in Canada. And whatever hat length you like. If you want a real slouchy hat, do 10, 11. You can do actually any hat you want with this. And if you wanted a looser slouch hat, you just use a bigger loom and do this pattern. Like I say, it knits small. I normally can't use a 36 for my head, so what I have to do is make a real tight brim that will draw in the hat, or I use actually a smaller loom, the one that's for 11 to 12-year-old kids. That's how small my head is. But this hat fits me just fine on a 36, so it knits small, just not a huge amount small, but it's small. You won't have to worry about the hat being too big. Okay, so we're just going to pause it, and we're going to do our 3 rows of owl eye and then our 2 rows of alternating the E-wrap and 2 stitch, and that's all. You use my 2 stitches and just keep going like that, and we'll meet you up. Okay, here we are after doing the pattern 2 times. So here's what you're starting to get for your pattern. It's looking really nice in here. And so I only did 2 passes, so that was the bind on, and then we did the purl, owl eye purl, and then I did 2 sets of pattern. And if I measure how long I am already, I'm already at almost 3 inches. So there you go. This hat goes really, really, really fast. And if I measure from the middle of the E-wrap stitch and down to owl eye, it's almost an inch. So whenever you do a pass, you're doing about an inch. So of course, if you have a different yarn, different gauge, your measurements are going to be different, but this hat goes really, really fast. So there, yeah, so we'll just continue on. And so you're gonna go up until you get close to where you want it. So I want 9 inches of my total measurement for my hat. So I need a few rows for my cast off thing. So I'm going to do 8.5. So I would say leave half an inch for how we're going to bind this off and the stitches we're going to use at the end there. So if you want to make your hat, making your hat 9.5 to 10 inches, then stop at a little over 9 inches. So we will meet you up there when we're ready to start doing the stitches to bind it off. And yeah, there's your pattern. So I'm going to do a close-up here so you can see what the pattern looks like here. It's going to be really pretty. You've got these kind of circular things here, and then the owl eye is coming back up here. Okay, so I'll meet you up. Okay, so I've gone up a little further, and then I was just going to show you this. So you want to know where you are if you put your work down and you get lost. Your owl eye stitch looks like this. I'll get really close. And here it is. Like here you are, and you've done, this is the E-wrap row right here and right here of the double E-wrap, and then you've gone into the owl eye stitch. So it's going here, here, and here. So those are your 3 stitches, and then back you're going into the other pattern. So that's what they look like. This little cluster here is your owl eye. This little cluster here is your owl eye. So that'll help you. Yeah, that's what it looks like if you forget where you are. And I'm going to have to name this hat, or we're not going to know what hat I'm talking about once I get enough hats on here. And I'm going to name it the Fun Owl Hat. First of all, it's in a, quite the colorful colors. This pattern would look really nice in a solid color too. But you can see the little owl eyes that are in my owl eye stitch. That's why I named it owl eye. Flat panel, you really see those owl eyes. But to me, it looks like there's these great big owl eyes here. Can you see them? 2 big owl eyes and a nose, a beak there, looking at me here in the hat. So I'm going to name it the Fun Owl Hat, and then we'll know which hat this is. People ask me questions. Okay, so we'll just keep going. I can't think of any other tips to give you right now, except just keep your work really, really loose. It'll be a lot more fun to do it loose, and I'm having a lot of fun making it. Like, look at how much I've gone. I haven't even finished my second pass, and look at how much of it's already knitted up. So pretty good. I can see from my timer I've only been working on this hat for less than 20 minutes. Oh no, 24 minutes it's saying right now, and I've got this far, and of course I've stopped and got myself something to eat and drink quickly and that kind of thing. And so I would say it looks to me like this hat, it would be put together in an hour. So yep, we'll see you when you're at the length that you want to be and you're ready to bind off. Okay, so here I am, and I am measuring my 8.5. I've got my measuring my measuring tape right here, and Yeah, I'm down here at 8.5. And so I'm ready to do the bind off as soon as I do my few rows of E-wrap at the end. So we do 4 rows of E-wrap at the end, and it's just normal E-wrap. Okay, we ended, so we just normal E-wrap all the way around, and we do 4 rows of that, and then we're going to do the bind off. So I'll just meet you up at the end here, and then we'll bind off after we do our 4 rows of E-wrap. All right, so we've done our 4 rows of E-wrap. We're almost done. So we're going to start the bind off, and what we're going to do is we're going to move over the pegs so that we only have half the pegs to bind off, because that's going to give us a lot less of a bulky bind off. So we just take the yarn off peg 1, and we just move it over and put it on peg 2. And then we take the yarn off peg 3 and go around, put it on peg 4. And then you can do that all the way around, and then we're just going to bind them off, but I'm just going to, or we're just going to knit them over, but I'm just going to do that as I go. So knit them over as I go, but you can do it at the end, or you can do it as you go, however you like to do it. Okay, so I think you get the general idea. We're just going around, and we're being left with 1 loop on every peg. Okay, so I'll meet you up when I get back around. Okay, so here we are, and we've only got 1 loop on each one, and then I just wound my yarn around 1.5 times, and then I just cut the end of the yarn. And then I'm just going to thread it into a needle. Here we go. And then all I'm going to do is come over, and I'm just going to scoop up the yarn. So the yarn's coming out of this one. I'm just going to scoop this one up, and then scoop this one up. I'm just scooping them up from the bottom. Scooping them up. Birds are making sweet little noises in the background. My 2 parrots love to hear me talk, so when I'm doing these videos, they make sweet little noises. Okay, and then I'm just going to come back to this one, the first one we did, and put it back in there. And then I'm going to take my loom hook, if I can find it here, and just pop these all off. You can do it with my fingers. It's pretty loose, but some of them are tight, so yeah, let's pop them off with the loom hook. And okay, oop, still got it on in a couple places here. There we go. Okay, now before we drawstring it, let's just take a look here actually from the inside. And you can see how many sets we did just by counting where we had these double rows of the double E-wrapping over two, or the E-wrapping over two pegs where we alternated. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I only had to do 6 sets of the pattern. So 6 times 5 is 35, and then we had a few rows at the beginning and a few rows of the E-wrap, so it's around 40 rows, this pattern. But of course you're going to do more rows if you have a bigger head. You would just do more E-wrap rows. Yeah. Or you could do less if you had a smaller head, or use a bigger or smaller loom, so you have lots of options there. And pull this just a little bit, and then I'm going to go to the back side. My needle in here, and we're just going to drawstring it closed. There we go. And I put my finger in here and make sure this all closed nice and evenly. There we go. Yep, just drawstring it closed. There we go. And then I'm just going to come up here. Where it's closed, there's a little hole there, and I'm just gonna for one thing cut my yarn smaller at this point so it's easier to work. There we go. And I'm just going to sew around in a kind of a circle to secure it. I'm going to tie a knot. There we go, and that hole is closed really good. And I'm just going to put a couple more stitches in, and then I'm just going to tie a knot in it. And I'm just going to, you can weave it in if you want to be super neat or anything, but it's on the inside of the hat, so I just cut it. Okay, and so that's what our bind off looks like. See, it's not bulky, it's pretty flat. It'd be nicer if I got it in the camera, wouldn't it? So then anyway, there it is, see? There's our end. It's not really super bulky or anything. And there's our hat. And I'm just gonna stretch the stitches a bit here. And we can take a look at it. And there it is. That's what it looks like. It looks really pretty. It's a very pretty stitch in here. And we've got a nice top. And it's going to look nice, slightly bulky the way I like it. It would also look great as a beanie, right? And it is just a bit of a slouchy beanie because that's the length I like on me. And then we have to do something with this thread right here. This piece of yarn. So I already pushed it from this side in through a hole onto the inside. So it's on the inside already. And just get it into my yarn needle. And because this pattern is on the lacy side, I want to hide it in these thicker brim pieces. And having these thicker brim pieces here is nice because that'll be on your ears, so the wind won't bother your ears on a brimless style. And just going to feed it in through a few bits of yarn. And that would hold it, but I always want mine to be just a little bit more secure, so what I do is I just unwind it a bit. So I made 2 pieces of yarn out of my yarn, and I put one in here. And the reason I'm doing it is such a bulky yarn that if I tied a knot with the whole thing, it would be a big bulky piece. So I just put this through another piece of yarn, And then I can just tie these in a knot, making sure that I'm not pulling anything. And just tie them in a knot, and then put them back together. Just twisting them a little bit and putting them back on the needle. And then I can just put it through a few more stitches here and there. Just hide it in the work a bit. There we go. And then just cut it off. There we go. And it's all hidden in the work now. And there we go. There's our hat. So I hope you had fun making it. It was really fast. So it took me about, with my breaks, I kept trying to look at the time as I was making it, but it was a tiny bit over an hour. That's all it took to make this hat. So it's nice and fast. And it would look super in a solid pattern too. So yes, enjoy, and we'll see you next time.